Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, where we discuss all things Web3 and blockchain in this new creator economy that's happening in this peer-to-peer world. I want to welcome journalists who's joining us here today, Micah Ray, aka Journalist. We're going to be talking about journalism on the blockchain for episode 21 of the Web3 Warriors. We're hitting our 6-month mark this week. We're really excited. Big milestone. I want to thank everybody who has joined us so far, all our listeners and viewers. It's been a fun ride, and we're going to continue building from here. So thank you, and looking forward to the conversation today. Before we get into that, I also want to thank our sponsor, who is Iskra, a Web3 gaming platform. We at Web3 Warriors know that gamers are often not compensated for the value that we create as a community. But at Iskra, both the gamers and the developers are able to be rewarded based on their participation in next-gen Web3 games that are both enjoyable and sustainable, so you can play and earn. So join today at pioneer.iskra.world to get access to their Discord and early access to the future of play. So thanks, Iskra. And with that, I'm really excited to talk about, what is journalism on the blockchain, or what does journalism look like in this new Web3 era? And we have the best guest we could possibly have for that, Micah, who's with us here and known affectionately in the Web3 community as Journalist himself. And he's joining us from a location where he does have to be a little bit secure, so he's wearing his mask here, keeping safety first, safety precautions. But thank you for joining us, Micah. I'm glad you were able to make it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Apologize for this here.
No need to apologize. Yeah. All good. I just want to quickly talk about, what I think journalism can become, or the implications for journalism on the blockchain, and then we'll throw to you and get a little bit of your background and get into some of the cool projects that you're working on in the space here. So when I look at, I'm a big fan of journalism personally. I almost went into journalism as a career path, ended up going more into the PR and other side of communications, but it's a very rewarding and important aspect of society, being able to tell truth to power, being able to actually uncover very important things that are happening in society. So on the blockchain, looking at journalism and looking at the amount of money in the space, I feel like there's two angles to it, right? There's the fact that we need real journalism about what's happening on the blockchain, like, genuine, investigative journalism about certain projects, about just the way that the blockchain is evolving, which in and of itself is a huge task. But then you look at maybe the next layer of journalism in Web3, which is actual journalism being minted onto the blockchain, in which case, like, it becomes kind of immutable and an actual, token, an NFT in time, right, of a specific event that happened. So I feel like that's a bigger conversation about maybe the evolution of journalism and how blockchain and Web3 maybe are going to usher in a new kind of journalism that cannot be censored, that is a lot more accountable, maybe transparent. So that's kind of what I'm looking at when I think about journalism in Web3. It's those two angles that are both equally important. There's the actual technology of, how is the blockchain going to boost journalism, maybe even protect journalism at a time when journalism arguably is under threat, more than we've seen, at least in my lifetime. And a lot of people questioning, very observable facts, and a lot of conspiracy theories being passed off as legitimate news and all of that fun stuff. So on the tech side, I feel like the blockchain, with its immutability, with its transparency, can actually be a solution to some of those issues that we see in journalism right now. But then on the other side of the actual uncovering, some of the crazy money games and the way that these NFTs are kind of artificially inflated a lot of the time, all it takes is like a small group of people with a lot of money to kind of boost any one of these NFT projects. So I think there's a lot of very demanding journalism to be done on that side of things as well. So that's where I'm looking at it. There's the storytelling side and there's the technology side. And I think there's an interesting something that happens there when you're combining the two in this journalism space that I don't think has been fully uncovered yet. So hopefully journalist Micah here is going to be able to shine a light on that and really share some of his experiences, as he's written for multiple publications in the space, and has a pretty amazing career already with a year and a half, almost 2 years in to this Web3 space. So with that, Micah, I want to welcome you again. Thanks so much for joining us and agreeing to be part of this podcast. So before we get into your thoughts on specifically blockchain journalism, maybe just if you could share with us, how did you get to Web3? How did you get into the blockchain? And tell us your backstory. Were you a journalist before you got into Web3 and the blockchain? And how did you land here?
Sure. I was not a journalist before the crypto space, although I did go to University of Oregon for journalism and public relations about 30 years ago. I never pursued it as a career or a professional path. I just didn't see my place in the sort of traditional legacy media that existed at the time, and I didn't feel that a lot of it before sort of say the internet really took off. There wasn't the same sort of opportunity or way and means to kind of push yourself forward as a freelance journalist as it is now. So there were not all the platforms, etc. So as that has evolved, I found myself more in television and film, producing independent film, pilot projects, sometimes videos, sometimes shorts, working with a lot of young creators, creators of color and women, and producing really compelling stories that sort of, talk about the human condition and, the way people see the world. So that was really exciting, but it didn't necessarily, with all the awards and the accolades that come with putting out great films, they don't always produce the income that you want. It doesn't always trickle down. So I remember moving to Los Angeles in about 2012. And at the time, I was coming off a Sundance Award-winning film, and I figured that it was time to move to LA from New York, and that I was going to be able to, kick everything off and be in Hollywood in no time. And it didn't necessarily work out that way. And I went through some hard times financially, as well as cancer, 2 surgeries, which really kind of forced my hand. I didn't want to fall into student loan size debt to my landlord during COVID, so I subleased my apartment and basically lived in a tent. This was actually before COVID began, but it was exacerbated by COVID. So what I thought was going to be me quickly returning back to my apartment turned out to be in a good extensive period of time. But thankfully, that time was also a time when there was not a lot happening in the world. I always say the world stood still at that time. And, you're able to really hone in and focus and strategize and plan, or, you could go crazy or whatever people did with their time. I was able to immerse myself in the crypto community, as you know. And so I spent a lot of hours in Clubhouse, basically in conversations, learning about the blockchain technology and uses and all of that stuff. And we all evolved through that. I believe in 2021, NFT trading skyrocketed 21,000% to $17 billion, which is really significant to be there for all of that and be able to sort of know a lot of the key players that kind of were part of this new wave here that lent itself to the journalism, because at the time I didn't necessarily know that's what I was going to be doing. And an opportunity presented itself with the Krasenstein brothers. They launched the Hill Reporter at one time. So they essentially decided they were going to start a publication called NFTs Daily. And I wrote for a few articles for them before NFTs Tips got going, which was basically it was a plan and a strategy to provide writers as a resource to the first ever DAO-led publication. So that enabled me to work for NFTS.WTF, which I did for a year. And that really got me going. I got nominated for Best Written Coverage of NFTs in New York, which was really awesome. Great opportunity to kind of get more embedded in the community, a little more known, easier to get interviews, etc. And I've been able to springboard that into what now will be the first publication of my own, which I'll be launching at NFT NYC this time. I'm speaking, and so it's been a great kind of growth and evolution, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Yeah, we'll definitely get into the Board AF platform and that. But I like what you were saying about how, you weren't really a day-to-day journalist per se prior to jumping into Web3 and the blockchain, but because of the skill set you had, you were able to lean into that kind of storytelling skill set, and you had studied journalism, right? You just hadn't necessarily had it as a day job. So then along comes NFTs, and this kind of new creator economy, like you said, went up 21,000% just last year. And we were both there for that whole wild ride of excitement and the amazing amount of people just jumping into the space and the energy and the money being invested. So I guess, how did you find your footing there? And was it, how would you say that like the moniker journalist, came about? I'm really curious about that because you've been journalist as long as I've known you. So I assumed you were a journalist before you got onto Clubhouse.
Well, that actually is kind of a little bit of a humorous story because Russell Simmons did that. And it happened in a Clubhouse room, and I confronted him about this platform and project and initiative he had going. I had some concerns that I expressed. There were very few people they were allowing onto the stage. I don't believe at the time, definitely my name wasn't journalist, but because I had started to write at the time, I was allowed to come up by his publicist. And there was a lot of wrangling beforehand about like what could and could not be said. And so I avoided a number of things that I wanted to confront him about, and essentially really began to nail down like the tenets of, the blockchain, the ethos, what this is all about, and how some of what he was doing seemed to be conflicting with that. And the community was concerned. And he became very concerned. And it's funny now, but I just remember him saying, that journalist, I want to address the journalist again. And he wouldn't let a couple of things go. And he was so insistent, and he didn't know my name, so he kept saying the journalist. And from that point on, it just kind of stuck.
Nice.
So it is sort of funny because I think at that point I realized, okay, this enables me to move differently through the space, get the information I need. And it was really a shorthand like username on Clubhouse that doesn't exist anywhere else, strangely enough.
Okay.
But in Clubhouse, it works well. You either see a name or a company or a word or whatever people want to put there. And that's sort of like a very quick, it's helped me to kind of push through cut through the fat oftentimes when I'm trying to get a story.
Most definitely.
So,
now that you mention it, I guess I do remember seeing your name as Micah Ray going back at the starting, and then it did turn to just journalist. And I love that we got that golden nugget of Russell Simmons. That, for anyone who doesn't know, is the Russell Simmons of Def Jam fame. Very established CEO in the hip hop space and a legend in his own right. Of Run DMC legend. So yeah, very cool. He was dropping an NFT. This is a really great story, actually. I'm so glad you brought this up because it's such an interesting case in point about, how NFT projects happen in this space, So someone like Russell Simmons, who in general has huge star power, right? Like respected amongst all hip hop legends in the game, comes on to Clubhouse telling the NFT community about his NFT platform and project that he's looking to promote. And there was a lot of, heavy questions that were coming up. But to journalists' point, they were screening who could come onto Clubhouse, like onto the stage to actually ask questions. Obviously, he's a pretty famous guy, right? So journalist, having his credentials, was able to get on stage, and he did ask the tough questions. And so Russell Simmons kept coming back at him saying, "Oh, I want to talk to the journalist. I want to talk to the journalist." And since then, he's been known as journalist. He changed his moniker on Clubhouse, and I think it's definitely helped you a lot. And I love that that's rooted in that Russell Simmons event, because I remember that. I didn't actually stay in the room long because it was kind of icky to me. I almost felt bad for Russell. I was like, oh, that was an interesting pitch there.
I mean, he had some other concerns that he didn't, want any distraction from the platform.
Right.
But in focusing on the platform, there was enough problems there that I don't think he really understood what he was going into. And then maybe he did, and that's why they were so protective, of the space. But, in general, talking about journalism and credibility and, the idea that a lot of things are bought and sold now, including, editorial that isn't announced as such, or, defined as such, or, Clubhouse rooms that are paid for that are not defined as such or introduced as such. It's quite, this gray area,
Mm-hmm.
So even though that was quite some time ago, it was an early indication of like how confusing the space would ultimately become, because there's all these chains and platforms that promise to solve problems and do things without necessarily telling you that there are other problems that they present.
That is definitely an ongoing issue. And yeah, just that lack of, I mean, I don't want to say integrity because that sounds a little harsh, but just the idea that wool is pulled over the eyes of many unsuspecting people quite easily, right? You buy the right amount of bots on Twitter and Discord, all of a sudden you look like a project that's going to the moon, just because you have 10,000 plus follows in less than a month. It must mean it's awesome, right? And their Discord is popping. They have so many people. It must mean it's a great project. I'm going to go spend $500 on this NFT and hope that it turns into 10,000, Yeah, it's an ongoing problem. And it is definitely a part of the space that we have at Web3 Warriors taken pains to not be part of that narrative, because there is so much more to the space. There's so much more to the technology. And I keep going back to this line. I can't remember who I heard it from, but I won't take full credit. But it was kind of riffing off of that 1990s political line, "It's the economy, stupid." But instead, it's like, it's the peer-to-peer, stupid, like, it's like, and nothing else really matters. It's just the fact that I can support this person, in South America, Africa, wherever in the world, directly, peer-to-peer, buy their art from them, support their creativity. And in journalist case, we can start supporting real journalism on the blockchain directly. Can you imagine the power that will unlock, being able to actually have journalists who are not accountable to a big corporation that wants to censor them, that wants to tell them what they can and can't say, and define, what's relevant and what's not relevant. So that is the tech, that's the peer-to-peer revolution. So maybe on that, Micah, on that point, how do you see that evolving, looking at the tech side of journalism and the blockchain? How is it going to revolutionize, the next wave of storytellers, I guess, and truth sayers,
Well, I mean, it's also problematic in that anyone can post or publish news, and there's no vetting, there's no fact checking.
But that problem's been live in Web 2 already, right? Like, that's been a Web 2 problem already.
So the indelible nature could make it maybe more problematic, but I think hopefully will exist more of a conversation about news, where just because something is posited, maybe the context or the facts or the story evolves. Now, what happens now? Are there reference points to continue that conversation and convey, that information to correct something, whatever? Like, with regular print journalism, if it's a weekly paper, the following week you might see in some small blurb at the bottom, "Oh, we made this mistake last week," or something, blah, blah, blah. We got the name wrong, or, our reporting was wrong. What do you do when everything's indelible and anyone can put anything up? The truth is potentially even harder to find, harder to sift through and identify. And so I do see that as potentially problematic. However, I do foresee there being platforms and ways to disseminate news and information that are kind of more like Reddit, Wikipedia ish,
Yeah.
where, okay, anyone can submit, but now it can be validated or upvoted to relevance because it is valuable to the overall community versus something that was more self-serving, or maybe just some think piece that is meant to just alter people's opinion about something. Maybe it's not valid or something. So maybe we will see that. I just think journalism's going to change. Even myself, in understanding what it is to deliver news now, I understand that you need to bring it to people where they are, where they spend their time, versus maybe requesting or expecting them to come to you so readily. So, the space is changing, and the speed in which news and information travels is so fast now as well that it's really challenging for journalism. You really have to hone in and focus on what value you're bringing, what you're doing that other outlets are not doing, and where you kind of fit into the overall sphere. And lastly, I'd say that we definitely need some more maturity in the space in terms of journalism. It's a lot of banking and finance reporting, crypto up and down, or are we all going to die type, you know. It's either that or the WACME. And so, we need more in-depth reporting. We need more stories about, what's happening in the space to kind of document this journey, and people that are planting these seeds and building these structures that later are going to be really significant for the entire industry to operate.
I don't want to lose the point you made about the indelible nature, but I want to ask you specifically, do you see anybody doing that well right now as far as like real long form investigative journalism related to the Web3 space?
There's a few publications that I've kind of been poking around and have noticed. There's some articles that I've read on NFT Evening. Decrypt seems to do a pretty good job.
I've seen Decrypt,
having a little more depth with their work. There's another one I'm trying to think of offhand that I can't. But different models are also being deployed because we're talking about Web3 now. So, the last publication I wrote for was essentially a Web2 publication reporting about Web3. But what is it to be a Web3 publication, and how is that different? And not just because you can connect your wallet or something. It's kind of more or less what is the way that a community is formed around a publication, and how does a community bring value to its readers, and communicate and exchange value with the readers. I think that's really important. I think Web2 publications have been pretty much front-facing, like, here's news, this is what we know that you don't know, or this is
the
what
clickbait,
we've
though.
got
The
access
clickbait is
to.
the worst, man.
Yeah, and that in crypto is not doing us in a service. If we can't reflect the maturity, the depth, and the intellectual, capacity of the space, then this is why we're growing slow and adoption is slow, because we're not perpetuating also the right. We're getting a lot of the negative media from the outside, and even people from within are quite pessimistic, which can be warranted. But then there needs to be this sort of front-facing, where's the Wall Street Journal for crypto? Where's the Atlantic? Where is, this is what we need, Rolling Stone.
Right.
We need those.
Entities.
And that will then,
I was going to say entities like those, but not run by a corporation. Instead, run maybe not necessarily even a DAO, but just a transparent organization that's on the blockchain and is not, some corporation with a bunch of lobbyist money going to Washington and being political and crazy and stuff. I want to shout out Portal Freak. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate you. 100. If anybody has any questions in the chat, feel free to ask your questions and we will answer them. We have Journalist here. He's a great question and answer guy. He can answer any Web3 journalist questions you might have. But yeah, thanks anybody who's watching us in the Twitch or YouTube. We're finally simul streaming on both platforms. Love to see it. But yeah, you touched on a lot of important points there, journalists. So I just wanted to say on the idea that it's indelible, right? And this was interesting because it came up yesterday in our Dream Conduit room. We were talking about immutability. And there's the idea that the token itself is immutable, but the metadata is not unchangeable. So it's an interesting caveat, right? So yes, the token is immutable, but you can actually change the metadata as long as it's not frozen. And so that may give an opportunity where, for example, revisions or needed changes to an article to reflect accuracy are done, but they're actually done in a very transparent way where you would have made that initial publication, right? Or mint if you're minting the publication, which is where I'm hoping things are going. But if you make a revision to it, that revision will also be tracked on the blockchain, right? And it'll be fully transparent. So there is that opportunity, right? So yeah, it's indelible to a point, but there are kind of ways to make it so that specifically if you were doing NFTs for journalism publication, you'd give yourself that opportunity to kind of adapt the metadata as required, which would still be done transparently.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So does it look like an addendum, or does it literally alter the original NFT? And
it looks like an addendum, I believe. Yeah, that's
Okay.
how it comes across. But that would be something to ask Andy. He's our resident developer at the Dream Conduit. But I'm pretty sure it's more similar. I think it actually depends on how you write the contract. So you can make it so that it happens like an addendum, or you can make it so it does just switch out the metadata without changing it. All right, Portal Freak's got some cool questions here. Talking about community building in Web3 being essential and ethical. Journalism is critical. What tools do you think the space needs to make sure this happens, to have this be built? And I think this might lead well into your Board AF news platform.
Yeah, a bit. Although, the big concern and, the discovery is, are people going to be reading? There isn't a big cross section of the crypto community that reads. It's a very fast pace, and everything is quite oral. The audio apps, real time, Twitter. People read headlines, sure. The people that do read tend to be the executives, people who are more calculating, people who want to understand nuance and have their finger on the pulse. So understanding who they are kind of then affects kind of the tools that you'll use, because people like that, generally speaking, have a lot of information to navigate and to process, and they're looking for ways and means to simplify and streamline. And so what I believe are some tools now are definitely what a staple that's never gone away, which is newsletters. For the longest time, people have known that email collection is really valuable. It's an important way to maintain a communication with your audience independent of all these platforms. So all the people that have been doing that up to this point have been able to take advantage of all these pivots with platforms, and they can maintain their audience and steer them where they want them to be. So that's even more valuable now than ever before, because people are getting back to reading their emails a little bit more than they were. And with all of the noise of everything else happening, it's kind of a static, still place. And maybe that's kind of why we're seeing, this kind of like resurgence with email newsletters. But it's definitely subscription services that are really working now. People want things to come to them versus seeking them out. And that's why places like Twitter and Telegram work, because you're basically now joining groups that this information and alpha and meta is all just going to like come to you. Now you don't have to do as much reading.
But
at the end of the day,
I want my alpha every day.
At the end of the day, it's great to also then have a service that might take the best journalism of the week, things that maybe you should read, so you don't have to read the crap or sift through what's what, and
Yeah,
it actually will bring that together.
yeah,
And
and
that's what Board AF is going to do. In addition to writing articles, it will be curating writing across the spectrum.
curating, aggregating. Yeah, it's awesome. Partle, great points you're bringing up here. So what do you think a Web3 Wall Street Journal looks like then, to your point, right? Long form maybe isn't as in demand, but at the same time, it's sorely needed, as you mentioned earlier, right? Like that real investigative, looking under the hood, identifying where some shadiness has happened, or even if it's not shady, just saying, this is why this project went up, or like, here's, how this project team was able to successfully launch such and such. But looking at the good, bad, and the ugly, of these projects, especially the bigger high dollar projects, So what does that look like? What does a Web3 Wall Street Journal look like?
So a couple of things. A couple of things that I decided early into this was there were things that I could not, there were ways that I could not compete with more staffed or funded publications. One, I wasn't going to be able to beat people to news. And two, also because it moves so fast, so you're always reporting on something that everybody kind of heard about already. But two, I didn't want to report about things that everybody else was going to be kind of reporting about, because I felt like there's so much in the space that is ignored that this was an opportunity to present news that maybe you didn't know you wanted to know. And so I feel like being distinct and different in that way is going to separate, the publication. And then at the same time, I feel like based on like your question, which I'm trying to kind of recall it a little bit better.
Just what the Wall Street Journal of Web3 looks like.
Yeah, it's in terms of the writing, it's got to be accessible. It's crypto's got a younger reader, kind of usership. It's skewing younger and younger, and the attention span isn't there. So you're going to want to write without speaking over people. I think a lot of Web2 publications, legacy publications, writers get very much into their own style and their vocabulary, and they often lose a lot of people. Their eyes glaze over and they just don't continue to read. So there will be a simplicity and a humor to it, which I think reflects like the crypto community, even though it is mature. So we're going to try to nail this tone in a way that is entertaining. So it's sort of like entertainment news, bit provocative, but at the same time informative and fun. And if we can accomplish that, I think that we're going to be fine.
That's very cool. And so maybe speak on how incorporating the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Just looking through our Canva, this cool picture, and the specific point about the Bored Ape Yacht Club number 9203 belonging to Mr. Low Sleazy, his amazing jail ape. So talking to your point about trying to make the news entertaining while also informative and important and impactful, how do you think, leaning into the Bored Ape Yacht Club branding and trying to incorporate that will help with that goal?
Well, it's really nailing the target audience. There are subdivisions within crypto. I myself am not big on the apes. I don't have one. I remember when they first came out, there was just nothing about one that compelled me to want one. Although now, obviously, in hindsight, that was a big mistake.
I'm with you on that, man. The art didn't speak to me either, and now I'm like, damn it.
Yeah. So generally speaking, I'm not necessarily impressed or anything with Bored Apes in general, although I respect what they've been able to do as a brand and grow it and the value. And if there is such thing as a blue chip stock, a household name of NFTs, that definitely is it. Right. So now you got to ask yourself, well, how often in the past, and especially in Web 2, have you been able to start a business? Like, say you wanted to start a McDonald's right now. You'd have to go and you'd have to pay them a franchise fee and then spend a whole bunch of money to do this, right? but then you've got to do everything their way. You have to make the burger the way that they said, etc. But you've got all this built-in advertising. McDonald's is doing it all, so everybody's coming, and you're good. The apes are similar, and NFTs of this caliber are similar in that we've seen a Bored Ape restaurant that decided it was going to be a cool activation for a few months. That's now a permanent restaurant in Long Beach. I remember going to the opening. There were 1,000 people
Wow.
waiting for burgers. And so you have sort of a built-in target market that understands exactly what that is. And so when I have the name Bored AF, even the word crypto or NFT is not even in the title. What's bringing that all together to understand the industry and everything is that ape. And that ape also sets a tone. I mean, it does represent value, money, success, but it's also a quite comical NFT. There's no way you can take that NFT seriously as art.
Right.
And so it's a bit making fun of itself, even to say that this is a publication for the well-informed and unimpressed. It's a bit of a jab at the pretentious community, yet it is absolutely for the pretentious community because the advertisers are going to want to associate with the Bored Ape. So they're sort of playing right into what I'm poking at, and I just think it's kind of this beautiful juxtaposition of sarcasm and reality.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to work, but that remains to be seen.
Oh, you're onto something there for sure. I love it. Sorry, what was that tagline again? News for the uninformed or unimpressed?
Opinions of the well-informed and unimpressed.
Well-informed and unimpressed. I like it.
Yeah, so it's definitely, geared for a little more seasoned individuals, people who have been around the block a couple of times who probably lost some crypto or have a bunch of NFTs they wish they didn't buy. It's kind of for people who've kind of been in it. They're looking to go deeper
NFT
now.
Collector, basically.
Yeah. So I want people to go deeper into the crypto culture now. Most of the news is quite shallow, and so this is going to take us places. There'll be more in-depth features about artists and people that are doing things, and ideas and inventive initiatives, and also philanthropy, which never gets enough exposure. So
that's for sure. Especially in this space where so much amazing philanthropy is being done, but instead people are talking about trolls and gremlins and Bored Apes.
Yeah. We're not going to cover rug pulls incessantly or some of the things that we know are going to be discussed. Everybody talks about Elon Musk. We're not going to write those stories.
Right.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Now, a word from our sponsors. Iskra is a Web3 gaming platform that believes the future of gaming is on the blockchain. Iskra offers a premier destination for gamers and developers to explore the thrill and opportunity that Web3 gaming alongside a vibrant and diverse community can provide. Explore a platform using a blockchain built for gaming, next-gen Web3 games, and a community system that rewards both players and developers based on their participation. Sign up today at pioneer.iskra.world and join the Discord group to get early access to the future of gaming. Portal Freak saying we need an article on BitClout. What happened? That would be a good long form article right there.
And it's kind of funny that I've only been a journalist for about a year and a half, yet I've outlived 2 publications already. That goes to show you sort of, the fleeting nature of the space.
Mm-hmm.
The Krasenstein brothers started NFTS Daily and essentially just abandoned it because they decided that they were going to put all of their effort and energy in BitClout. I wonder in hindsight for them what they're thinking, because they really jumped out and took a lead. And they actually had the ability, as people who started a publication called The Hill Reporter that was successful, that they ended up selling.
Mm-hmm.
They could have actually really done something significant in the space. And instead, we've had, people with other interests, mostly revenue generating. And that's kind of this weird space now where there's so many stories to be told. and there are people that really want their story told, and there are people with money that really want their story told. So now it's like, well, if I give you X, can you write an article?
So
But
let's speak
then,
on that. Let's speak on that a little
yeah,
bit, right? Because I
then the
think,
problem is, well, do I believe in what you're doing? Do I
yeah,
believe that you're not a rug pull? Do I should I put my name as a journalist in the creator economy behind an article that I can't stand behind? You can't do it the same way that Web 2 and old journalism did it, which is some of the problem that you mentioned earlier that is with journalism.
right.
You can't be bought. Um, Editorials need to be clear. And I'm still trying to work out what exactly that means with this publication. But one thing will be certain that it'll be quite clear what has been commissioned, what is not, what is, advertorial
Yeah, an
or
editorial ad,
editorial.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think that integrity is important. We both, worked briefly, or well, it was briefly for me. You were there much longer at NFTS.WTF, and I love, the stories I did. I love the stories you did. A lot of other people I know from the community. A lot of great stories that uncovered really cool NFT projects, right? But looking at the management and looking at, the idea of a DAO structure, running a news organization, in that scenario, it was pretty clear the DAO didn't really have much or any say on a general, story by story basis. But do you think that, I mean, how does that work, right? I think you have a lot of experience. Last week we talked to the Dream Conduit, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, which is what we're talking about when we talk about DAOs. And in this Web3 space, in the blockchain space, the goal for many organizations is to launch a decentralized autonomous organization in contrast to kind of the traditional corporate structure. So ideally, that might be how a news organization is run, so that you don't run into those kind of old traditional problems. But ultimately, there's always going to be that potential for, like you say, people to be like, oh, you're going to give me $10,000 to write a good article about you? Sure. Like, just no questions asked, I'll do it. And there's always going to be that potential for people in news to take that. So what are you going to do at Board AF, I guess, specifically to counter that? But then how do you also think the space kind of, because I feel like it's possible for essentially best practices to be set out, like some of the stuff you just mentioned, as far as like being clear when it's a paid editorial article. But how does the technology help strengthen journalism, I guess, is the question. And maybe you're implementing that at Board AF.
I mean, one thing that I've been thinking about, because I did create some token journalism NFTs where people could purchase and sponsor coverage, whether it was them or gifting it to somebody else, etc. Um, I think that it could be interesting to attach those tokens to articles um, as a way to kind of show how it was originated or funded. Um, but I think in general, it's just going to be about the language of these articles and the publications and the journalists to be forthcoming. Um, that's the biggest thing. We're seeing it in the Twitter spaces and clubhouses as well, where people are feeling in some ways um, exploited when they're being asked by people to, come to a space and hang out with me. I'm talking about X and not knowing that person's getting paid and utilizing, you know, their algorithmic pull to fill the room. You
Yeah.
know, it's just a lot. I think ethical boundaries have moved. What people actually are upset by. Um, I don't think people are shocked anymore that someone has commissioned a fluff piece or something, or just recently, the idea that um, the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case involved, you know, using a publication to slander somebody, written seemingly
Right.
anonymously, you know, and however that deal went down for that to happen and get published, it's just unfortunate. Um, And so that's why maybe it's even the best thing to just make sure that even when you're being compensated to cover something, that you just make sure that you're honest. You know, can they buy a lie out of you, or can they just buy,
Right.
like, the attention that your story might bring, and maybe they have to roll the dice on, like, how well they like it after that.
Yeah.
But when you start twisting people's arms with an amount of Ethereum or something, or an amount of money, or hey, I need this result, I need it to state this or assert this,
Yeah.
then we have a lot of problems,
Well,
if it's not clear.
yeah. You just saying that made me think of one specific article I did was about Neonexus, right? Which was a Solana metaverse project, which was really cool. And I don't think it was a rug pull at all. The developers behind it seemed very genuine. But for whatever reason, it just went under. It failed, unfortunately, to materialize into the big metaverse project that they wanted to. And so I initially wrote an article about it that was quite glowing. I was really impressed with what they were doing because I spoke directly to the lead, who was creating the whole thing. But on both points, one, the fact that I might have influenced somebody to go buy that and then they lost their money because it ended up going under, so I feel kind of shitty about that. But beyond that, there was also, I don't know, people above me, I'm pretty sure, did get paid for me to write that article, but I didn't get paid as if it was a great, advertorial. I just got paid like a normal writer, right? So it does make you think, like, yeah, those kind of things happening over at the top of an organization are kind of sketchy. And maybe, do you see a future where, I don't know what the solution is. I guess it's always going to be potential for that kind of, I don't know, corruption in media. But do you see a future where, like, when that is uncovered, that media platform essentially becomes like persona non grata, and it's just like said on the blockchain, these people are are not reputable. They're just taking money for BS articles. Like, is that a future you see?
I don't know, because like we've seen, Trump incessantly try to take down like the New York Times or whatever on these same assertions, whether they're real or not. People just decide who they're gonna read or pay attention to, or who they're gonna support, and we just, everybody's going, retreating to their corners. So I don't know. But then also, having not worked in journalism extensively in Web 2, I'm not so sure that all this hasn't been going on forever there too. If I was
Oh,
working for some
yeah.
paper and somebody was like, "Hey, I need you to write an article about X," do you always know that, the paper has been compensated, or, you just don't know. Like, I don't know how any of that has worked, but I have a feeling it's been messy and convoluted for a really long time. Maybe
Mm.
even, I shouldn't even say maybe, probably since literature and publishing has
To a certain
began.
extent, you can go back
Yeah,
and read those fathers of PR, right? The name's escaping me, but some of those old American people who kind of
yeah,
created the whole entity of PR. It was not very above board in its
yeah, and
original
it's
original
powerful
days.
stuff. I compare it to music, and how you can really change opinion, public opinion, and shape narrative. Music is even more powerful in that it's so visceral, and you don't have to actually read and process.
Mm.
You just feel immediately.
Yeah, that's
But like, literature, it's very powerful. These people that are, even these shooters that are writing these long, extensive manifestos, I find that interesting.
right.
They take months to pen these things, and they want to be heard. They want them read, and they realize, as soon as I put that in writing and I make that a public document, that then I will always be heard. The words that I said. And I want to kind of bring that back around to the crypto space, because it doesn't necessarily completely understand the value of journalism yet. All this fleeting stuff, the conversations, the tweets, the whatever, it's not sticky in
Mm.
terms of history like people think. And when we look back at writing articles and in-depth pieces about, you know culture and ethos, and you know what all this is about, then that's how we're going to know what took place during this
Yeah,
time.
that's the
It's
real
not,
historical value, right?
yeah. And sure, there's going to be, a lot of audio recordings, obviously, which maybe that will take a different form of content consumption than just reading. I don't know.
Mm.
But like everything cannot be gone, in the stream and stick around for years to come if it's important.
No doubt. Um, Portal had brought up another couple questions or points that are interesting on the concept of journalism being kept accurate through competition, and maybe there's a scenario where, and I think that's the case. Competition is definitely a big part of how we guarantee checks and balances on media, and not allowing any, centralization of media, so that, like we see what happens if everybody gets their news from Fox, right? Or if anybody gets their news from CNN for that point, but especially Fox. But there's certain media outlets that go out of their way to really try to tunnel you into their point of view, right? And so if you don't go out of that point of view, it's very easy to not get accurate information. So yeah, I think competition is kind of the solution for a lack of accuracy or a lack of integrity as well in the media space. And to a certain extent, Web2 helped make sure that happened, right? At a time when maybe the news was becoming far too centralized, far too defined by the corporate narrative. You have the left column, the center column, and the right column, and then corporations above each of those columns basically defining what the kind of guardrails are for that news platform, right? So do you think that maybe in Web3, obviously there's still a lot of room for competition, as you have boardaf.wtf coming up. How do you view the space kind of evolving? And do you think that competition is kind of the solution to some of these less reputable things happening in the space right now?
I mean, it's all about tribes, and so definitely there can't be too many publications. I just think people are going to gravitate to what feels good to them, and where they want to get their news, whatever those sources are. There's a lot of room for growth, and it also means that there's a lot of room for people to come in and do things that have worked in Web 2 that they can kind of reimagine or remix for Web 3. So we're still so early that just being here and doing, meeting a need is probably, you know, you're almost halfway there if you stick to it and, just be productive. So I do feel that there could be a lot more publications. There could be a lot more niche publications that serve communities in more profound ways. And then these publications are then themselves communities. So that's the Web 3 part of it, where some Web 2 publications have been able to accomplish that in some ways, but Web 3 is going to be more profound with the tokenizing, the community, and other aspects of being able to, give rewards and, really kind of unite people together, even at IRL events, etc. So it's something that I'll be looking forward to, sort of thinking about, what does it mean to be a Web 3 publication, and how is it different than just, bringing news? Because then that also then differentiates all of these publications, and it gives them an existence that's like more robust than just, hey, this is the news that we write, this is the style that we write it in, and either like it or not.
Yeah, and it goes back to your point about trying to make it somewhat entertaining, but also meeting people where they're at. So I got this cool deck where you're talking about kind of that, what you were saying earlier about having the newsletters, which you're saying are tending to actually trend upwards, right? Like they're getting a bit more useful, and they can be a bit more long form, right? Like they can be very concise in the email, but you can just have like read more, click, and then you go into the long form article, right? So that seems to be something you're leaning on quite a bit at the Board AF publication.
Yeah. Definitely so. And the email newsletter is not going to be short. It's going to be in itself kind of a little bit of a magazine.
Cool.
But there will be the read more element, because the articles are going to live in the ecosystems that they were created in. So one of the things that I made a conscious decision about was, although there will be a archive, a repository for its own articles, because it's curating anyway. These articles are wherever they are. Medium, I mentioned Decrypt, I mentioned, NFT Evening, NFT or Mag NFT. If there's good writing somewhere, we're going to curate it into the newsletter along with the writing that the publication itself produces. And then, it's just, it's more or less a community of thought.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yeah.
exciting, man. So when you think about the archives, are you going to be minting these pieces then? Have you
Oh,
considered
yeah.
the actual tokenizing of your articles?
Yeah. So these platforms, to guess elaborate where I was a minute ago, is that Medium is being used. Mirror XYZ is the Web3
Mirror is great, yeah.
platform for the articles, but then they're also going to be appearing in Reddit, and they're gonna, there's LinkedIn and Twitter newsletters that currently exist. So none of that stuff is going to go away. I think the idea of proliferating content and meeting people where they find it or hang out means to not sort of create this master place where you just need to go here. It seems simple, but it's harder and harder to divert people away from where they are.
For
So
sure.
there will be a Telegram group for this news, in addition to Reddit and Medium and Mirror. So those ecosystems are going to have their own audiences as well. In Medium already, I have close to maybe 1,000 followers. So why would I start publishing in this publication over here and completely abandon my traction in all these places? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So the newsletter will feed you the content, and then you'll be able to visit it wherever it's at. And if you choose to follow the publication's Medium or the publication's, uh, Twitter or whatever,
Mhm.
that's great too. But if you subscribe to the publication, then you're most likely not to miss anything,
No
in
doubt.
general. Although there'll be some real time elements to social, etc. Um, some people will get a lot of the, at least the board AF content through maybe LinkedIn. You know,
LinkedIn too,
that's
yeah.
just gonna. It's just they're not going to be able to get the entire curated suite of what we put together if they don't subscribe.
So I was gonna, yeah. So only subscribers get the full suite of information and access to the Board AF
Yeah,
community. So you said Mirror.xyz is essentially the Web3 publication. Like you're gonna use so basically you draft it on Medium. You already have your audience there, right? So you have the article kind of created, finalized on Medium, published, and then you take that, also mint it on Mirror.xyz. And have you looked into Mirror.xyz as a way to crowdsource and crowdfund for Board AF? Because they have a really cool crowdfunding option on that site. You could actually create basically pull all the main nuggets from this Canva deck you have and have it kind of laid out in almost like a business proposal on a Mirror publication, like something that you mint, and then you can actually
yeah,
connect like a wallet GoFundMe where they basically have like a crowdsourcing, an Ethereum funded crowdsourcing option for projects specifically, where people can just say support this project and send you whatever amount
yeah,
of Ethereum they want. So that's another really cool option on Mirror.
yeah. It's a really awesome platform, and to be honest, I'm still digging into everything that's possible. So this will be kind of a growing, evolving thing. There'll be some NFTs initially at first to kind of fund getting this going, but there'll definitely be a tokenized community to reveal later and some other things. I just need to kind of ease into this. I think one of the things that we're finding in Web3 is either you've got this long, illustrious like roadmap, or you're more organically finding your way.
Right.
And so I'm not trying to announce too many things that might actually shift or change just based on new information or seeing how things are working out. Um, but it will be sort of this steady, constant reevaluation of what's being done, what could be done differently or better, because that's an advantage of having a smaller, more nimble entity. Otherwise, scale up and just make it some huge, behemoth publishing company.
Mhm.
But that's not exactly, what this is. So hopefully all this stuff will kind of find its way smoothly and like cohesively with the flow of the publication and subscribership. There's
Right.
currently 14,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome. That's the starting point. And I'm hoping after NFT NYC to see that number closer to 20. Be awesome if it even could hit 25. But it's just going to grow from wherever it is now for as long as it lives. The
And in order
idea
to
of,
sign up for that, I
yeah.
just want all our listeners to know, can you go to boardaf.wtf right now to subscribe, or where should they go to subscribe?
And at this precise moment, while the site is being built, you cannot do that. It had to be taken down.
Okay.
And it's maybe about a week before it goes up. The launch is NFT NYC, so it being the 11th now, I want it up by the 19th. But it's being worked on, so I apologize for that. It also is cool to talk about it and not be like shilling per se,
Oh, for
because
sure,
there's
for
nothing
sure.
that
I just thought
can be
people
done.
might be interested. They'll find you on Twitter at Skid Row Crypto. That's
Yeah,
SKIDROWCRYPTO, Skid Row
yeah.
Crypto. You can find Micah there, and I'm sure you can get onto the list. Just reach out to him directly. So definitely.
Yeah, and it'll be really easy to find the publication and get signed on when it gets going. It's going to be really present, so
No doubt.
I look forward to that.
I have to ask on the branding, you definitely spoke to it a little bit as far as being entertaining and definitely leaning into the Bored Ape Yacht Club being Bored AF. The AF.WTF. Are you concerned at all around any of that, or it's like definitely just capturing kind of the zeitgeist of the space where people do not give an F?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the things that being a freelancer for so long, I don't know how long this culture has evolved, because maybe it's been longer than I think. But what I've noticed in crypto is, for the most part, the gloves are off. You have executives cursing, and it's just nobody's wearing a tie. You can have your dreads, you can have your tattoos. Um, it's just a more sort of unapologetic space, and I do feel that uh, it suits the tone. You know, if I couldn't have a meaningful conversation with Black Dove or Super Rare because of the name, then that would be problematic. But
Right.
they're actually trying to tap into this kind of a tone, because in many circles, a lot of these entities are a little too pretentious and they're trying to be more down to earth.
Most
So I'm kind
definitely.
of giving them the opportunity to really engage the community again and loosen up a little bit and actually give away some stuff. So that's kind of the last element of this. My plan for this is every time you open an email, you're going to get a prize, or there's going to be an offer, or there's some opportunity to like win something.
So
The
definitely giving.
sponsors are going to have to get involved in a different way
Mm,
than doing ads and stuff like that. So I'm working with some business development people even still to refine what this means, but they're basically going to facilitate the delivery of the email newsletter and other messaging, which includes SMS that's geo-targeted. So like during NFT NYC, you could respond to a text with, and now you're getting all the updates while you're at the conference, for instance, about parties or special events or a password to something, etc. So the sponsors will get involved with the merchandising, which is why the ape is so important, and also with a lot of the airdrops, NFT giveaways, prizes, merch. That is going to be how they're going to be involved. I do think in Web3, sponsors need to compensate for the attention they get. And so that's why I think we're seeing so much engagement at events where you can attend for free and there's an open bar, because the community wants to convene. And if you want that attention, you're going to have to make the community happy. And that's really going to be the approach for this. we don't want you to buy an ad. We want you to give the community something.
And I do love that approach. You know, shout out to Eric, your conduit, and other people, event planners that are building with the kind of this in mind, or even the Zoratopia event that I saw them doing. I think they're leaning on this type of angle as well, because it's you know, these event planners could just take the money from the sponsors and still charge people at the door and still charge people for a drink. They could do that. So it's a very conscious effort of the event planners to actually take the sponsorship money. Of course, they're paying themselves a little bit as well, but making that extra effort to actually reward the community and incentivize people to come out and just have a good time without having to pay, you know, ridiculous fees just to get through the door and then buy your own drinks and all that. Like, it's that part of the Web3 community that is amazing, you know, and that's really the exciting opportunities we have here. It's a real shift in the way that business is done, you know, a shift in like this kind of old greedy, like maximum profit margin kind of perspective of throwing events, but even more broadly, all business. You know, I feel like that kind of greed metric and that profit margin priority is slowly being chipped away at. Maybe that's just my idealism. I don't know.
No, it's awesome. I mean, you know, at NFTLA, the satellite event that Motivate hosted, you know, Harmony could have taken a bunch of money and paid for a bunch of signage and stuff. But instead, somebody must have said to them, well, why don't you give the money away to the community instead? Mm-hmm. So they sat there for 8-ish hours listening to pitches and giving away amounts from a few hundred to a few thousand for Web3 people to just come up and pitch their ideas and get a little seed money. That's amazing. It was awesome.
I wish I heard about that. I would have gone and pitched Web3 Warriors.
Totally, because people got anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand. Now, granted, it was the Harmony One token, so they're giving their token, but you could walk right to the market and cash it out if you wanted. Or now you're in their ecosystem, so it worked out for them.
Right.
But, you know, there's so much spent on traditional ad and signage that I don't think has the same effect that it used to have. So when you talk about NFTs tips and it's, tricked out Rolls Royce in Miami with these logos, I mean, I remember the Rolls Royce, but I don't think I could tell you a single sponsor that I remember being on that car.
Interesting.
So where's your value really? I remember Harmony gave away money for 8 hours. I'll remember that I went to this party and it was an open bar and it was sponsored by Black Dove.
Right.
You know, I just think that there's going to be a shift there too. Traditional advertising does not work in the crypto space. Even when people in the crypto space feel marketed to, there is an aversion to it.
Yeah.
I think the average person in the community does not like marketers or marketing.
If you see an advertisement on Twitter for an NFT project, do not ever buy that NFT project. If it is a promoted tweet, do not ever purchase an NFT.
The intelligence of the community, it now means you have to do more creative things, right? That's really what it means, because we're not going to buy this other thing. We know exactly what it is. We're whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But give us something, okay. And you know, I remember a time when people were like, oh, you know, the public, it wants everything free. This is messed up. But then when you look at all the profiting off the data, it's not messed up.
Exactly. No, it's really not. And I mean, it's taps into this abundance mindset, which I love to bring up. You know, I feel like the shift from Web 2, Web 1, and even prior, you know, traditional capitalist business mindset is a scarcity mindset, right? It's I must have it, otherwise someone else is going to take it from me kind of mindset, you know? Whereas I think the new mindset in Web3 is the abundance mindset, you know, and it's really the idea that when I give someone something as a kind of reward or an acknowledgement of their value, chances are, they're going to reciprocate that, or at the very least appreciate it. So speak nicely and highly of you going forward. But more importantly, you're actually rewarding them for the value they're bringing to your organization. And that ends up having like a flywheel effect. So yeah, getting away from this whole, stingy kind of like scarcity mindset and embracing kind of the new abundance mindset is what it's all about. And I agree, Portal, the Web3 people are tired of being sold to, tired of the marketing. We want the genuine relationships. And yeah, what's up, Skid Row? See, you took off the mask. So welcome.
Yeah, and I also feel, I'm able to take it off now, the medical people left. But the other thing too is if we're aware that the community that you're getting your money from is a starving artist community, or a community of people who are all trying to find their way into this dream, right? The idea of taking from them is very Web2. We're going to sell you your dream back to you, and we're going to make you scrape whatever money you have together to buy into this thing that we're selling back to you that you believe in so much.
Yeah,
that's the old way of doing it.
That's Web2.
Where now, if you want people endeared and you want the crypto community to respect and utilize your platform or whatever it is, they need to know that you support it and you're not just a cannibal. And I think maybe that's where a lot of the partying's coming in, but we still need to mature what that is. It can't just be a bunch of open bars.
No.
What Harmony did was awesome, and I think we need to see more creative ways that we took this ad money that we would have traditionally used, and we're going to figure out a really constructive, helpful way for the community to benefit. And then that's what's going to be, the campaign.
You know what's really interesting that just occurred to me as you were talking about that? An opportunity, and I swear I joke that I have like multiple very lucrative opportunities that we discuss on this podcast, but this is going to be one of them. But really just like the opportunity for an organization to that point that wants to actually give back to a specific community, to look at a community that has genuine growth around their NFT project, but the NFT project is just slept on, for whatever reason. The floor is way down. It's not that valuable. It's not worth a lot right now, right? But they have a group of maybe 500, 1,000, 1,500 collectors who are like diehard supporters and love the project despite its low valuation and current floor price, right? One organization comes around and has a very specific, aligned interest in what this community is doing, right? And if this organization is well financed and says, we're going to buy the floor of this project and we are going to work with you to actually help this project grow in capacity and influence. And with that, we don't ask for anything else in return but acknowledgement that we did this for you, So you're growing your brand by helping a specific project that aligns with your brand. And you're then raising the bar for everybody who's involved with the project, helping their investment be worth a lot more. So they're all very appreciative of you as a brand. And then who knows where that project can go going forward as the floor rises and demand, picks up and things start to spin roll or steamroll from there. If you were the organization that came in and made that all possible and saved a fledgling NFT project that is doing genuine good work that aligns with your brand, who knows where that can go. Just going to drop that out there because it's a very interesting opportunity, to your point about what Web3 presents for organizations and brands.
Yeah, and I could totally, I could see that, buy the floor or whatever that program is. It's literally like a way to essentially bring attention to a really worthwhile project that just didn't, either the timing, maybe it wasn't well administrated, maybe, there was big noise of some major 10K collection at the time. Who knows what the reason was, but it was something that just got lost in the sauce and slipped through the cracks and actually is reputable and maybe has some, real like use or help or solution. So it's actually something that should be successful, at least by the perception of the general public, right? Everyone could get behind that. That sounds really awesome. And sponsors could get behind that in buying the floor. Because as we know, you buy the floor price goes up, perception changes, and maybe that suddenly jumpstarts that collection
Yeah,
again.
people start wanting to buy it because they get the FOMO.
Now, them buying the floor alone means they have a vested interest without them having to ask for anything else.
Exactly.
Because if it's effective, the NFTs that they bought now have more value.
Exactly.
Now, hey, maybe they put them back on the market and they get their return.
And this is something that I've kind of pitched as a derivative angle at Storytime DAO as well for ourselves if we have the budget for it, just because I think it's awesome, and it gives an opportunity, because a lot of these projects are specifically allowing you to actually use their image, and likeness for commercial rights and properties. So with those specific type of projects that clearly state that you have full IP and commercial rights to the image that you purchase as an NFT, like the opportunity there to, help with buying up the floor, but then turn around and actually do something creative and interesting with that asset, which then boosts the, relevance of the overall project, is just an enormous opportunity there as well. So yeah, I don't know. I have a soft spot for some of these NFT PFP projects that I think are really cool and have really interesting social good angles to them, but are being slept on by the degens because they just, didn't go to the moon fast enough for them or whatever. Yeah, I definitely have a bit of a soft spot for them. So I feel like any organizations out there listening, this is a huge opportunity. You will get a lot of good, positive feedback if you help one of these projects, and really it could be a very good PR opportunity for any organization that aligns their brand with a specific NFT project that's doing similar things, But yeah,
it really could. I think it needs to be an entity. I think an entity could go out to people and say, do you want to be this angel? Do you want to be this savior? This week, this month, whatever it is. I think there'd be a lot of people maybe interested in that. It has its own built-in value, because if they're sourced, if they're really identified and they're really well conceived, promising projects that just, for whatever reason, didn't rise above the noise, it sounds like it could even be a series,
No doubt. There you go.
There's a lot of stuff still possible out there. I'm waiting for some marketer to do some show called the Collection Whisperer or something, where collections in trouble call this guy the same way, the restaurants call the chef guy or whatever.
That sounds like it's going to be on reality TV.
The couple of years we're going to have, Save My Collection type shows and stuff. Let's see where this goes.
I can see it. I can see it going there for sure. No, it's really awesome, man. I know we've gone over the hour mark here. It's been really great conversations. I do want to let anyone in the chat, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We'll be going for a few more minutes here. I don't want to take up too much more time of Micah's. Been really, really great conversation. I was just wondering, you mentioned kind of having a launch NFT for Bored AF. So, how is that going to look like? And is it going to be a scenario where maybe, like we were talking about with Mirror.xyz, you just mint some copies of a publication and sell it as a Genesis NFT? Or have you thought about, what does that Genesis NFT for Bored AF look like?
It will be some type of NFT NYC launch NFT, some type of a founders NFT.
Okay.
Just not sure exactly what yet, and it'll be the NFT that'll probably unlock a lot of things moving forward. But it also is kind of more of a supporting the infrastructure, because I'm going to need to scale and start paying writers, and I actually need to bring on a sales team. Sales team in crypto is super important, because usually the founder does not have the time to chase down. If you're going to make the venture itself work, somebody needs to be focused on exploiting it monetarily.
Tell me about it, man.
So I will probably have a few people as kind of like account executives. There is so much money in crypto and so many entities throwing money around that I don't think it's going to be hard to find the sponsors to get them in. But initially, those NFTs are kind of support the infrastructure to get a lot of things up and running. I'm going to want to pay to have reporters and journalists who are, say, somebody's at ETH Denver and I'm not.
Right.
Now I can maybe compensate someone there, fly someone there. You know, it needs a newsroom needs to really be run the way that newsrooms are run everywhere else. We just don't have it in crypto yet,
Right.
but we're going to. You
But
know,
to your
so
point,
I need
starting out
people,
small is also okay, right?
yeah, and then it'll scale, and to be able to compensate people to show up for newsroom meetings and talk about what they're hearing, or hunt down stories, and all the things that actually need people on payroll or compensated for their time because they didn't actually deliver an article yet. So right now, all of the pay formula for Web3 publishing is you write an article, you get paid for the written article. Well, what if it took you 3 months to investigate something?
Yeah. That's why I said I couldn't do
You
journalism, man. I was like, I couldn't do it. It was like too many unpaid hours, man.
Yeah. So all this has to be taken in consideration and an infrastructure to fund that, so we get what we deserve, and the space can mature.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Well, that's cool. And I mean, you don't have to get too creative with those Genesis NFTs, right? You got the Bored Ape already, so that's a derivative. You've got some cool graphics of him already doing stuff, reading his phone.
Yeah.
Like that image I have up right now of him reading his phone could just be a cool NFT. A Genesis collector.
It might be something, literally that simple, like the logo at first, the founding logo or something.
With the ape. Just make sure you got the ape in there. You'll be good. Any derivative, for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's exciting, man. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions from the chat. I do want to give you an opportunity. Every guest we have on here, we always ask this question as a wrap up. Looking at the space, there's a lot of FUD, as we call it, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There are people not really sure, is it really real? Is it worth getting into? So what do you say to those who are kind of not really sure and just trying to get a feel and see if Web3 is right for them? What do you say to creators who are still hesitant?
There's definitely a very long, illustrious future for blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. And where art fits into that is that it's empowering a lot of people to reach new audiences and make stronger, kind of more profound communities of people who are supporting their work. If you only look at it just for that, then there is no denying that this is an essential part of what the future of like how business is conducted and how transactions happen. Just if you only just look at it that way, that's why it's important to get involved, because it is where economies are going, period. So to be involved now this early in and establishing yourself gives you the best opportunity to capitalize as the masses move into the space. You already have your systems in place and you already have your ability to kind of be seen and are actually sort of seen already, whatever, extent that is. It's just super, super important. I think when the internet, which a lot of people maybe aren't old enough to remember this, but in the early 90s, I remember friends telling me about this thing called the internet. It sounds really stupid now, but at the time I was in my early 20s. So I'm in my early 20s. People are talking about the internet, and all the questions were things like, are people going to really trust putting their credit card, typing it into a computer and buying something?
My dad
These
still
were the
doesn't trust that.
questions, right? So every industry has these questions that make you question the whole thing of like, is it even going to work or not? We're past that already.
Yeah.
It is now time to learn about it, and the more you learn about it, the more effective you're going to be in the coming years. Plain and simple. There's no rush to that. It's just where everything's going. So in the future, the same way we talk about the internet so casually, like we just take it for granted now, that's what blockchain and NFTs and crypto is going to be. It's just we're really early in. I'll probably be dead. It'd be nice to be alive, maybe. But hey, it's for if it's young creators that were my age at the time, what I would have told myself was all of this, like, get your website and all this stuff, like, I would have jumped into all that much sooner.
Yeah, no
And so
doubt.
we are in that same space now. Get your collections going, get your site up, get your all your, Web3, establish your presence, just all of that stuff. This is the now for that. If you're selling now, great. But even if you're not, this is just the beginning. You're planting the seeds to be selling years from now.
No doubt.
That's my plea. That's what I would say.
I love it. Thanks, Micah. And that goes back to the point, the technology is not going anywhere. Or as I said before, it's the peer-to-peer, stupid, it's the peer-to-peer. Yeah. It's not going anywhere. That's it. And now's the time to get your foot in the door and learn about the technology. That's why we're calling it Web3. It's just the next stage in evolution, the peer-to-peer transactions, the ability to support and connect with creators and other developers and people just building in the digital space anywhere in the world and support them financially and create, financial transactions and understanding among a group with the decentralized organizations that are popping up. Yeah, so it's really exciting. Just wherever you can plug in, no matter what you're doing right now in Web 2 in the traditional space, there's a space for you here in Web 3 to bring those skills into this new avenue and really just kind of enjoy the opportunities that the peer-to-peer transactions and the peer-to-peer support among the community is offering. So really exciting.
Yeah. And I'll even go as far as to say the liquidity factor. If you think about working for an employer and waiting for a check every 2 weeks, like, I know that people complain about maybe how long it takes to take crypto and cash it through, blah, 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 to finally go in your bank account. But, my system used to be a handful of days, but I've noticed now, since my bank and Uphold have been talking more, even though they say 3 business days, it's almost kind of the next day now.
That's good.
So the idea of liquidity, selling something and it immediately going into your wallet that you can cash out without any middleman, sort of, other than the process you're doing to cash out your crypto, it's very powerful. I'm kind of operating in that space now where I pay my taxes. So, for me to say, hey, I cash crypto out, I report the crypto I cash out. But I'm right now in this economy able to make more crypto than I'm making in fiat as a freelancer. And so if crypto didn't exist, where would I be as a freelancer in the fiat space right now? I'd be really hurting.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing is crypto's actually becoming more and more the source of my income. And in some situations, some moments in time, it's all of it, which has tax implications, but it's also very empowering, the idea that there are revenue streams now coming from an entirely new industry.
An entirely
and all
digital
you have to do
industry,
is get involved there. So if you're not active there, you're only leaving money on the table that is potentially there that you're just not tapping into.
Exactly. And I mean, you spoke about it briefly off the top, the fact that you were at one point like living out of a tent and having to sublease your apartment, and it was right at that point when, you found this opportunity in Web3 and you realized that there was a way to generate revenue via crypto for your literature and for the stories that you were uncovering in the NFT space. So it's just a really, eye-opening example of how, one person's life was changed by Web3 and the blockchain, and specifically the NFT community, and the stories that are coming out of that community, not even selling NFTs per se, but actually just focusing on the economy and the community coming out of the space, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities. The idea that I'm going to keep writing and launch a publication is not something that I would easily do in Web 2.
Right. Exactly.
But again, it kind of goes back to this space being new, and there's going to be a lot of first of things that haven't been done. So, like, it's not even about being an entrepreneurial genius. Sometimes it's about just doing something in a space that nobody's doing that quite yet. There's just a huge market share, this huge chunk of the pie there waiting for you to just get your slice of it, So people that are doing freelance services in Web 2, and I say Web 2, like just fiat or, think about how you
off
can
the
be
blockchain.
providing the same service or whatever to the people in crypto, which also includes entities and orgs, the companies. They're quite laden with their crypto. They're not as they don't haggle as much about paying. You know, the crypto's flowing. I don't think it's always going to be this way.
Right.
But I can definitely, in comparison, which I've said before in clubhouse rooms, been able to charge 3 or 4 times what I would make to do that same copywriting job or something in Web 2.
That's
so
awesome.
why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And where there's a demand, you know, there's that many fewer people who are able to talk about Web3, you know. So the fact that you have that skill set, you have the vocabulary, you know, all the language that's going to resonate with people in the space, like that's worth a lot, you know. So yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're getting paid 3 times more. That's how it should be. Yeah, you know, there should be a high demand for writers like yourself, and I'm slowly trying to get more into that as well. And I look forward to being able to contribute to the Board AF platform when you're up and running and looking for contributions. I definitely look forward to that, and hopefully we can have you back again, Micah, and talk about that as you're rolled out and you got your NFTs out there and your publications on the blockchain. It'll be really cool to touch base with you again and see where things are, and then talk journalism, because it's going to be an evolving space, as you've mentioned. You know, it's barely even started as of right now. All the focus is on the hype and making the money and the coins and, you know, the markets and all that. How many people are talking about the real technology and the lives being changed and the projects being managed, you know?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we wrap, I just want to do a quick thank you to our sponsor, Iskra, the Web3 gaming platform, where gamers are compensated for the value that we create as a gamer community. At Iskra, both the gamers and the developers are rewarded for their participation in next-gen Web3 games that are both enjoyable and sustainable, so you can play and earn. You can check out more and join their Discord at pioneer.iskra.world to get early access to the future of gaming and play on the blockchain. So thanks for that. And with that, I think we're going to wrap. No other questions from the chat. It's been really amazing, Micah. I think we touched on a lot of great ideas, a lot of awesome, lucrative ideas, honestly, that we should probably action before someone else does. So we'll keep tabs on that. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be our last episode before NFT NYC, where we're hoping to activate the Web3 Warriors brand in some new and exciting ways. So keep tabs with that. Peace out, Frog, Sasha, Portal. Thanks for the amazing questions. And thank you, journalist. Take care.
Thank you. All right.
Until next time, we'll catch you in the metaverse.